Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first story is titled, Steal My Identity? That'll cost you $800. A few years back, I had my identity stolen, right in the middle of a mental health crisis. I was already stressed out and overwhelmed by life, and then the identity theft just made everything worse. Suddenly, random purchases like iPhones and laptops were showing up on my bills, purchases I had never made. The identity thief opened credit cards with my identity, bank accounts, you name it. The authorities were, of course, no help, and I felt very alone in this twisted game of whack-a-mole, where every time I thought I had fixed one problem, another popped up. I even had a rental car company come after me, as the thief had rented a car in my name and then stole it. Of course, this was a blow to my credit as well, and resolving the whole thing was enormously stressful. Eventually, I had frozen my accounts, contested the charges, canceled the credit cards, and followed all of the appropriate steps. All that was left to do was to close the fraudulent bank account. When I went to do so, however, I was met with a snag. I explained the situation to the bank, which was not a bank I personally used, and requested they close the account. They told me they could not just delete the account. However, as there was money still in it, approximately $800, which would need to be withdrawn, I explained that wasn't technically my money, and they replied that the account could not be closed with the money remaining inside. An account that I opened, in which I, Corvitus, put my money, so guess who's $800 richer? After all, the identity thief took from me, and only fair to take a little something back. The next story is titled, Workday is 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Backstory. I have worked in the wastewater industry for going on 10 years. The first wastewater plant I worked for was for a small town. They were pretty old school. No internet, computer, or time clock. My boss would just fill out the time slips and turn them in each week. We only had 3 employees, including myself, so it was easy record keeping, but completely on my boss's honor system. I would always get to work early, unlock all the buildings, calibrate the lab equipment, and start any machines that needed to be started. Hours were 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. I would usually be there at 6:30, if not earlier. I would do the snow plowing, so they would allow me to come in earlier and plow and leave after my 8 hours, if I didn't want the overtime. My boss regularly came in late, usually 2 times a week, anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour. A couple of times I would have an appointment for 3:30 and leave work at 3 to get there. Since I am there 30 minutes prior to work starting, I figured it is no big deal. Did it twice a month, and after the second time, my boss reprimanded me by docking my pay and sent a memo to our sewer authority stating I was leaving work early. I said I understand and I won't do it again. I was royally pissed, but I had a good job and didn't want to piss off the sewer authority members, who didn't fully understand our work environment. We were in the process of doing some upgrades at the plant, so a lot of construction crews were in and out with equipment. So I decided to prove a point. I started forgetting my keys to the plant's gate every now and then. On the second time I forgot my keys, my boss decided to show up to work at 8 a.m. I had maybe 5 cars behind me for an hour waiting to get to work at our plant when the vice chairman of our board drove by. When he asked me what was going on, I explained that I forgot my keys and was waiting on my boss to get there so we could get in. Needless to say, my boss got an earful from his bosses. And when he came to me, I explained our workday is from 7 a.m. to 3:30. I will not do anything work-related until 7 a.m. sharp. My boss must have got a new alarm clock because he was rarely late again. The next story is titled, And Therefore You Never Mock Someone's Phobias, Karen. I'm a grocery store cashier for a very small chain in southeastern Michigan. For 6 hours a day, 4 days a week, I ring order after order of groceries. Believe me, it gets monotonous. About a week or two ago, it was a super busy day. I had been going nonstop for 2 hours, with no time between customers. That's when, during the short 5-minute lull that miraculously arrived, Karen came along. I went through my usual spiel, hi, how are you, paper or plastic, etc., and started ringing her groceries. She had a lot of fruits and veggies, which is cool, better than some of the things I have to ring. Don't ask, seriously. And then came the grapes. Now, don't get me wrong, I love grapes. Sweet, crunchy, tart, and they don't require really any prep before you can eat them. Yum! No, my issue was with the large spider that was in the bag with the grapes. I have a serious spider phobia. When I was a kid, a spider, no idea which kind, we were on a family biking trip through a nearby nature trail when it happened. Bit me on the arm, and over the course of a few days, my parents just thought it was a mosquito bite at first. It swelled up into a big, hard lump, the size of a softball. I still vividly remember the night they finally realized they needed to take action, and rushed me to the nearest hospital ER. Traumatizing. Ever since, I can't see a spider without shrieking and freezing up. Any other bug in the house? No problem. I see a spider, one of my brothers has to come and rescue me. So, as you can imagine, the large bag of grapes spider did not go over well. I managed to mostly quell the shriek, instead letting out a strangled yelp and jolted back from the register and the offending bag, and refused to touch it again until the spider was very dead. My grocery store is one of those that still has a separate bagger job, so I wasn't alone at the register. The very nice kid who was my current bagger was kind enough to come around and remove the spider-infested sack of fruit and went to get Karen a new bag. I apologized and started to scan again, and as soon as he left, the ridicule began. "It was just a spider. Why did you freak out? Are you seriously telling me that a grown-ass woman had to have a teenage boy rescue her from an itsy-bitsy spider? How pathetic. Just get over it. It was the size of a pea at best. I carried that bag all the way over here. I'm scared of spiders, and I was just fine." You shouldn't have had an issue swiping it and moving on for 5 seconds, and so on and so forth. Meanwhile, I just had to sit there and smile at her. As soon as he came back, she shut up, and there was smiles and compliments for such a nice young man. That was where I decided to get petty. Now, in my store, produce is rung on one of two ways. It might be the same everywhere. I don't know. But anyway, it's either rung up by the count or by the weight. So we have a scale built into the register to weigh items. Grapes are priced weight. So I went ahead and dropped the nice new spider-free bag on the scale. And while I typed in the produce code, I made sure to ever so stealthily place my thumb on that scale and apply the slightest bit of pressure, magically turning 2 pounds 7 ounces into 4 pounds 2 ounces. And at $3.99 per pound, it made a difference, mind you. Karen had a huge order, so that 1 pound 7 ounces didn't noticeably affect the total. But if Karen was going to mock me like that, then turn around like she'd done nothing wrong and praise my coworker, she was going to have to pay for it. And pay for it she did. The next story is titled, Entitled Mother Thinks She Owns My House. Characters: E.M., Entitled Mother; E.K., Entitled Mother's Kid; O.P., me; G.F., my girlfriend. Background: I live in a rather quiet apartment building, but as soon as this crazy idiot moved here, I knew that my situation was going to go tits up. I always try my best to be kind to my neighbors, and it wasn't any different for E.M. I enjoy having small get-togethers in my apartment with a couple of my neighbors, so when E.M. and her annoying-as-hell kid moved into the building, I decided to invite them to a weekly Friday adults-only game night. Don't judge. This was all pre-COVID. The party was set to begin at 7 o'clock, but E.M. came a good hour late. Our parties are adults only because we have lots of alcoholic beverages and some weed set out. E.M. decides to ignore the clear-as-day rule that kids aren't allowed and she decides to bring her little craphead to my house. As soon as I see the kid, I tell her, no kids allowed. But then she goes and says, "It's okay." He has my permission. I sigh and ask her to come back in 10 minutes. Now, me and my neighbors have to clear all of the weed and alcohol and pack them in the cupboards. She and her piece of crap come back in 30 minutes and immediately start eating all of my food. I'm really a non-confrontational person, so telling them to stop was a big no-no. This isn't even the real story yet. It's just got some background to explain the crap show that is about to happen. The story: COVID happened. GF was staying at my place during COVID because her parents both have pre-existing conditions. We went through the whole process: quarantine, testing, and eventually moving. So one day I was out of the house getting groceries when GF called me crying and saying she didn't feel safe in our apartment. Apparently, my girlfriend was taking a shower when she heard someone moaning. She thought it was me, and she opened the curtain to see EK, that little ducker, beating his meat and standing outside the open bathroom door. She screamed, slapped him, and kicked him out. Hearing this, I immediately rushed home to comfort her, having absolutely no clue how that little bastard got into my home. As soon as I get home, I see EM standing outside my apartment, banging on the door, maskless. I tap her on the shoulder and start to explain to her that she really needs to control her kid. I tried to be as nice as possible, even though I was seething with anger. I tried to tell her that I understand his body is going through changes and that he has urges, but breaking into people's houses and doing crap like this wasn't okay at all. Before I can finish, EM goes off at me. She starts screaming that her son didn't break into anyone's house and that GF had no right to hit him. She said she was going to call the cops and tell them that we assaulted that little crap. Even though at this point I'm literally about to slap her, I try my best to remain calm and ask how her mistake of a son got into my house. The entitled mother starts screaming at me, and in her anger, she lets it slip that during my neighborly meetings in the background section, she took one of my apartment keys. My brain just shuts off. GF comes out hearing the commotion and apparently heard that EM stole my keys. GF goes off. She says she is calling the cops for stealing, breaking and entering, and invasion of privacy. At this point, my brain is still processing what EM just said. EM screams that back in her rental agreement, she was given access to all the amenities of the apartment, and she somehow believed that my house belonged to them too. Keep in mind, I own my apartment. GF and I kept strong on her promise and called the cops right then and there. EM got arrested, but I don't know what happened from there. All I know is that I changed my locks, got only 2 new house keys, gave one to GF and kept in, and bought one of those camera doorbell things. The next story is titled Bank Account Bill Paying Revenge. I'm inspired to tell this story after reading another user's story about cell phone revenge with her ex. I was in a long-term relationship that went south. My ex was a manipulative narcissist who did everything he could to screw me over financially and gaslight me when we split up and moved to our own places. He had an eviction under his name, so our apartment lease and utilities were all under my name. For the last month we lived together, he pocketed the utility money and didn't pay the utilities. So when I got my own place, I had to pay off the past due amounts. Meanwhile, I had removed him as an authorized user from my bank accounts and told him to do the same with his accounts because I didn't want a single financial link between us remaining. Coincidentally, I lost my debit card after moving out on my own, and when I went to the bank to get a new one issued, discovered he had not removed my name as an authorized user from his bank account. He only had about $35 to his name, but I transferred his last $35 to my account and closed his account. all above board and legal. It didn't begin to cover what he owed me, but when he called me to tell me what an awful person I was because he had multiple checks bounce and his direct deposit was in limbo, it made the debt all worth it. The next story is titled Backwards Revenge. I know this is a revenge thread, but I didn't know where else to put it. Let's start with the fact that I am terrible at taking care of myself. My partner knows this. I can go days without drinking water. My partner found the loophole to my hydration issue. They know that it's a pet peeve of mine to have half-empty bottles lying around. But I also feel wasteful dumping the rest of the liquids, so they learn that to make me drink more liquids, all he must do is open a bottle and drink part of it, and then leave it. As I go through cleaning the apartment, I don't want to be wasteful or see the bottle, so I drink it. Welcome to the loophole of hydrating your useless girlfriend. The last story is titled Steal From Me. Lose your best personality. For context, I'm a 21-year-old gay male, and I recently quit my job. Now I don't know if this is the right spot to post, but I think you guys will get a kick out of this. I have lung problems. I can't have too much movement. Otherwise, I start having problems breathing. Well, 3 hours ago, I left my job for reasons. My boss was a selfish dick that doesn't care for people. He hated me the most for taking too many off days, although I only had 2 in a span of 3 years. Yesterday was my last straw. I came back from being off for 3 days. Since I was spending my time with my brother before he died, my boss called me. Ian, not my real name, why were you out for 3 days? I explained that my brother died and wanted to spend 3 days with him. Not a good reason. Miss one more day, you are fired. I sigh. Then I quit. I don't want to take your bull crap anymore. You don't let me do my job. I would rather quit than deal with you. Duck off. I'm out of here. I don't stand up to myself at all, but this is the first meeting I felt proud. I'm a tech person, so he lost a lot. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.